Hi class, so today we're going to be working on, let me move this. No, doesn't know when to move. There we go. Today we're going to be working on multiplying rational numbers. So 1-1 was talking about what rational numbers are. Today we're going to practice multiplying them. So we'll practice multiplying fractions with fractions and decimals. We'll throw some whole numbers in there as well. So remember a few rules for multiplying in terms of positive and negative. When we're talking about integers, if you remember, integers are the whole numbers that are both positive and negative. So positive 3, negative 3, those are integers. The family of numbers that we call integers. If you have a positive number times a positive number, you get a positive answer. If you have a negative number times a negative number, you also get a positive. So I think if you remember, we talked about if the two numbers have the same sign, the answer will always be positive. On the other hand, a positive times a negative is a negative, and a negative times a positive is a negative. So if the signs are different, your answer will be negative. If you might remember, I think I showed you this little kind of tic-tac-toe board to kind of help you remember. So draw a little tic-tac-toe board, plus signs all the way down in one diagonal. Fill the rest in with negatives. So you can read it, a positive times a negative is a negative. A negative times a positive is a negative, and a negative times a negative is a positive. I think it goes to without saying that a positive times a positive is positive, because that's what you learned back in 3rd grade. All right, so let's practice multiplying. Let's start multiplying with multiplying a fraction and an integer. So let's do 3 examples. So how about we take -1/2 times 6. So when multiplying fractions with a whole number, I usually always put a 1 underneath my whole number. When you multiply, it goes straight across. So -1 times 6 will be -6. 2 times 1 is 2. And I can divide -6 divided by 2 to get -3. Again, a negative times a positive was a negative. And then a negative divided by a positive is a negative again. You might notice that what we could have done here was cross reduce. So I highly recommend trying to get in the habit of cross reducing. So in cross reducing, I notice, well, my 1 and my 1 don't really cross reduce because I would just cross them off and put 1. That doesn't make sense. But my 2 and my 6 reduces. 2 goes into 2 one time, and 2 goes into 6 3 times. So you're kind of dividing. So -1 times 3 is -3. 1 times 1 is 1, and we can reduce that or just rewrite it in a more simplified form, -3. So here are our answers. We get the same answer, 2 different ways. I recommend starting to notice when you can cross reduce, because that will make things a little bit easier when we start getting into harder problems and bigger numbers. If you can simplify it beforehand, it'll make the multiplication a little bit easier. All right, let's do 2 more examples. And I'll write them a little differently, so you might see them in sort of like a parenthesis form. And let's make this -4. -4 times -2/3. So I'll rewrite that. I'll put a 1 underneath my 4, and I'll go straight across. I notice I can't really cross reduce. My 4 and my 3 are relatively prime. Same thing with my 1 and my 2. All right, so multiplying straight across, -4 times -2 gives me +8. 1 times 3 is 3. We might practice writing them, keeping them as improper. You'll notice we'll likely do that a little bit more kind of later on in the 8th grade curriculum. Or we can change it to a mixed number. 3 goes into 8. 2 times 6, which is 2 left over, so 2 2/3. All right, one more. How about, let's do 4/5 times -10. All right, so setting it up, I'll put a 1 underneath my 10, and I can either multiply straight across or cross reduce. I'm going to cross reduce first because that makes it a little easier. So 4 and my 1 are good, but 5 goes into 5 and 10. 5 goes into 5 one time, 5 goes into 10 2 times. Now, the one thing you have to be careful about here is that you don't forget that there's a negative right there. So multiplying 4 times -2 gives me -8. 1 times 1 is 1, so I can just simplify, rewrite this as -1. So those are our examples of multiplying a fraction with an integer. Integers being a positive or negative whole number. All right, multiplying fractions. So we were kind of multiplying fractions to begin with. We were basically creating a fraction here with these whole numbers. So if you have two fractions, remember, it doesn't matter what your denominators are. You can just multiply straight across. I do recommend trying to get in that habit of cross-reducing beforehand. So 2/3 times 6/8. So I'm going to cross-reduce the 2 and the 8. So 2 goes into 2 one time. 2 goes into 8 4 times. And then I can cross-reduce my 3 and my 6. 3 goes into 3 once. 3 goes into 6 twice. So multiplying 1 times 2, 2. 1 times 4, 4. And that reduces to 1/2. You could have gone back and also reduced the 6 and 8 beforehand, reduced the 2 and 4 here. It doesn't really matter. There are probably many, many, many ways we could have reduced these two fractions to get our final answer to be 1/2. All right, let's look at answer, or problem B. Okay. -1/4 times -3/8. So again, multiplying, going straight across. If some of you like to rewrite it, so when they're in like, kind of plain fraction form, that's absolutely fine. So your preference. -1 times -3. So a negative times a negative is a positive. So I'll positive 3. 4 times 8 is 32. Check to see if you reduce. 3 does not go into 32 evenly. 3 goes into 30 and 33, but not 32. So there's our answer. And let's do one more. I'm going to make some of these mixed numbers, and we have to do something a little different when we multiply with mixed numbers. So how about -2 and 1/4 times 3 and 1/2. Okay, big thing here is that before you multiply mixed numbers, you have to change them to improper fractions. You cannot just multiply, -2 times 3 is -6. 1 times 1 is 1. 4 times 2 is 8. Okay, that's not what we do here. What you have to do first is change them to improper. So changing them to improper, remember you multiply your whole number times your denominator. So I'd get, I'm going to leave my negative there. 2 times 4 is 8, plus 1 is 9. So I have -9/4 times 3 times 2 is 6, plus 1 is 7, times +7/2. All right, let's check to see if I can reduce anything. Doesn't look like I can, so let's multiply straight across. So -7 times -9 times a +7, -63. 4 times 2, 8. Now, because this problem was given to us with these already in as mixed numbers, let's go ahead and write our answer as a mixed number. It's just kind of like the polite thing to do. Okay, so 8 goes into 63. Well, I know 8 times 8 is 64. So 8 goes into 63 7 times, and that's 56, which leaves 7 left over, and I forgot my little negative symbol there, so -7 and 7/8 should be our answer. Cool? All right. Last one, multiplying decimals. So if you remember when you're, kind of like a little side note, when you're adding decimals, you really have to make sure that you line them up, adding and subtracting. Now, when you're, so you might have to add zeros where you need to get your decimal answer, the proper decimal answer. When you're multiplying, you don't have to line your decimals up. You can just multiply it normal, but at the very end, you have to do a little something different. So we'll just do 2 examples here, because I'm pretty sure you guys have been doing this since 5th grade, right? So let's take 1.3 times 0.2. So I'll multiply normal. 2 times 3 is 6. 2 times 1 is 2. I'll leave my space or add a 0. I usually leave a space. 0 times 3 is 0. 0 times 1 is 0. So that didn't really do anything. So I get 6, 2, and 0. Count your spaces. There are 2 digits behind my decimals. So it means I have to start from the back and move my decimal to the left 2 times. So my final answer should be 0.26. Some students will always ask, do I have to write a 0 in front of that decimal? Not really, but it's kind of the right way to write it. So try and start writing 0.26 instead of just 0.26. Sometimes if you don't have like a a really defined decimal point there, I can't really see it, and so it's hard to grade it. I don't know if you did 0.26 or 26, so write a 0 in there and it kind of helps denote that that's a decimal answer. All right, let's do B. How about 1.24 times 3.5? Okay, so multiplying. 5 times 4 is 20. Carry my 2. 5 times 2 is 10. Plus 2, I get 12. Carry my 1. 5 times 1 is 5 plus 1, I get 6. Okay, I'll leave a space. I'll do the next row in a different color. 3 times 4 is 12. That way when I carry this 1, you know I'm carrying the blue one. 3 times 2 is 6, plus 1 is 7. And 3 times 1 is 3. Alright, so let's add these. 0 plus 0 is 0. 2 plus 2, 4. That gives me 13. Carry my 1, I get 4. So from here, let's count my decimal spaces. I have 3 digits behind my decimal. So starting from the back, 1, 2, 3, that's where my decimal should go. So my answer, 4.340, or we can drop that N0, 4.34. And that's it for section 1-2. So tomorrow in class we'll just be doing a lot of practicing with multiplying positive and negative numbers, and some of those numbers being fractions. Practicing, again, simplifying, cross-reducing fractions, and then multiplying decimals.